Okay, so here's where we need to take a deep breath and zoom out a little bit. So, to revisit my original question, what could potentially be the source of the significant toxicity that I had been noticing over just the past few years in Orinoco politics? The following that I'll discuss in this video is my interpretation after personally following these events in real time and then studying the broader context and the history behind all of it. And what I have found when connecting those dots is actually a pretty straight line from the start of the political activities of Jim and Wendy Phillips in our overall region directly to the dysfunction and toxicity at the local government here in Orinoco. I also really want to take the time to reiterate, as I discussed in the intro to all of these videos, this is not intended to be a personal attack on anyone. As best as I could, I provided factual information backed up by legitimate resources. The interpretations that I will share from this work are mine. It's up to everybody to make their own interpretations and opinions on this. Now, I know I'll be shouted at and criticized for being negative or biased or for not doing my part, or likely even worse, and that's fine. But that will mostly be by people who don't do their part and actually listen to this before attacking me. I'm really not even intending this for them. This work was done to share with people who want to genuinely make a difference here. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Wendy, and to a lesser extent Jim, sought positions of political power within mere months of moving into the local area. Despite Wendy having admitted in a previous interview that she had no experience in politics prior to 2021. Her admitted inexperience seems to really have been validated by her fellow Republicans when she was ousted from a GOP state committee. Remember how we discussed in a previous video that she had been described by the Minnesota State Republican leadership as, quote, using her position as more of a launching pad for her own ambitions, and concluding that she didn't have the skills for a position where she is supposed to be voicing other people's positions rather than her own, unquote. The Olmsted County GOP, which Wendy chairs, still to this day, is also described by state Republican leadership as, quote, a fallen state, not a functioning group, not run by serious people, unquote. Wendy was unsuccessful in her first bids for appointed and elected seats and has experienced a significant rejection from the serious members of her own political party at the state level. Maybe perhaps to counter some of that rejection, she has quite consistently surrounded herself with sympathetic supporters. These same people can now be found sitting on influential seats here in Orinoco. I want to rewind just a bit back to the video where I shared my experience of having my constitutional rights violated by the City Council in April of 2023. The initial reason why I spoke up in the first place in March of 2023 is because I could see, after having closely followed the recent actions of the City Council, that this council was strategically placing specific people in specific influential seats in Orinoco. Both the Planning and Zoning Committee and the EDA Board have the potential to dramatically impact the community. I felt it was of extreme importance that the right people be chosen for the right reasons for these positions. At the time, I didn't even know Wendy was the chair of the Planning and Zoning Committee. Planning and zoning committees, for example, they have a long, torturous history in our country. Many discriminatory and harmful policies have been in place across the country from committees such as these. Hence, my specific focus on making sure this committee was seated appropriately. Chaired by Wendy Phillips, with Jim Phillips and Jim Richard on as well, I was very concerned about how the intentions of this committee would play out. When Paul Pendergrass was chosen to round out this group, my concerns were confirmed. It didn't take long for my concerns to be fully validated by Jim Phillips himself. During a P&Z meeting in November of, you guessed it, 2023, they were discussing a proposal for a new housing development in Orinoco. Jim can be heard making a comment that really stopped me in my tracks. I'll play the clip and I'll let him say it himself.
But yeah, my concern, and I lived out in Southern California for 45 years, is just want to maintain that we get the right type of families that are associated with that, if I can say it slightly off of that. And that's where the association would make a difference on watching that they would have their hands in and being, making sure everything is run correctly.
Well, I mean, for the
I brought this incident several times to City Council, asking for clarification of his comment. I was met with only silence. I finally took the opportunity at the candidate forum to ask Jim Phillips what he meant by the right types of families. He explained to me that I had taken this comment out of context, and that what he was saying is that he was glad there would be an HOA to make sure the right types of families would move into that development. And there it was. Finally, I had the explanation I had been asking for. Jim's deeper context that I was told I was missing was that he felt reassured by the proposal, given that there would be an HOA to illegally discriminate against potential residents of the development. This is such a crystal clear example of the root of my passion behind all of this. I've been very closely following this council and these elected or appointed officials for years, and things are not okay. Wendy's political failures and abuses seem to be extending to the city of Orinoco. She and her network have strategically placed specific people in places of great influence in Orinoco. And now, with the possibility of her husband being elected as mayor of the city, we could find ourselves in a very bad spot. In a small city like Orinoco, we will always find friends at our side in seats of influence on councils or committees or boards. That's actually the best part of these small communities, working shoulder to shoulder with your neighbors on important issues. But that, my friends, is not what this is. This is something very different. The citizens of Orinoco really need to understand the full context and history behind what has been happening regionally and in our city for the past few years to be able to know how to make this better, which is honestly why I made these videos. I've had the opportunity recently to speak with several members of this community, and I am convinced that if we all know the truth, we will do the right thing. The truth, unfortunately, can be very difficult to unearth. But once we do, we have to speak to it and we have to bring it to light. Take what I've done here as a starting point. Question it, research it, prove me wrong if you can. For the well-being of everyone in our small community of Orinoco, we have to share the truth because our well-being has a much larger collateral effect. Our community might be small, but the impact of our citizens is powerful.